Montana Territory, October 1882. The wind howled across the plains as the train hissed to a stop at the weather depot in Boulder Valley. Quinn Lawson stood beside his buckskin mare, squinting through dust at the handful of passengers stepping down. He had not expected her to carry a child. She stepped off last, boots soft on the wooden platform, holding a sleeping little boy against her shoulder. Her hat was too large for her face, and her coat looked borrowed, but her eyes when they met his were steady and tired, like someone who had run a long way and finally stopped. "You are Quinn Lawson?" she asked, adjusting the child in her arms. He nodded once. "You must be Calla Vennor." "Yes," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "And this is my son Finn." The boy stirred, his small fingers curling in her shawl. Quinn took off his hat. Not out of manners, though his mother had taught him better than most, but out of something else. Respect, maybe, or recognition. She was not what he had pictured in his letters. She was more real. "I was not told you had a child," he said, not unkindly. "I could not leave him," she said. "I will understand if I did not ask you to," he said, cutting her off gently. "Let me take your bag." She hesitated, then handed it over. It was light, too light for a woman and a child starting over. Calla followed him to the wagon. She moved carefully, like her body still remembered the train's sway. Finn stayed asleep, tucked under her shawl, his cheeks pink from fever or cold. Quinn could not tell. They rode in silence for a while. The land rolled out wide around them, gold and brown and waiting for snow. Calla looked out at it like she was trying to measure what kind of life it could hold. "Is it just you out there?" she asked after a long stretch of quiet. He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Just me and the cattle. House is small but warm. Got a room for you. Or for both of you if you prefer." She looked over at him then. The wind had pulled strands of her hair loose, brushing her jaw. Her eyes were gray, but not cold. "I appreciate that," she said. "I am not used to kindness without a price." Quinn's hands tightened on the reins. "I do not believe in charging people for decency." The sun dropped lower, casting long shadows over the hills. When they reached the ranch, he helped her down, then lifted Finn from her arms. The boy barely stirred. "I will put him in the spare bed," Quinn said. Calla followed, her hands rubbing together for warmth. Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke and coffee. It was plain but clean. A man's house with quiet corners and boots by the door. She watched as he laid Finn gently down, pulling a quilt over his shoulders. The boy's breathing stayed even. "You are gentle with him," she said. Quinn glanced up. "I lost a brother once. He was about that age. Fever took him before we could get a doctor out." Her eyes softened. "I am sorry." He shrugged once. "You learn to be careful with small things." They ate supper at the table: beans, cornbread, and coffee. Calla ate like someone who had not had a real meal in days. She thanked him twice. He only nodded. That night, he gave her the bed and took the cot near the stove. She tried to argue, but he would not hear it. "I invited you here," he said. "I will see it done right." She stood in the doorway for a moment, holding Finn, then said, "Thank you, Mr. Lawson." "Quinn," he said without looking up. "You can call me Quinn." The days that followed settled into a rhythm. Quinn rose early, worked the cattle, chopped wood. Calla cooked, cleaned, tended to Finn. The boy was quiet but bright-eyed, clinging to her skirt like a shadow. One morning, Calla came out to the porch carrying a basket of washed clothes. She paused when she saw Quinn fixing the fence nearby. Finn toddled behind her, dragging a stick through the dirt. "You work too hard," she said lightly. He looked over, sweat on his brow. "Idle hands do not feed a house." She smiled, the first real one he had seen from her. "Still, You do not have to do it all alone. I am not, he said. She blinked, then looked down at the clothes in her arms. Well, I suppose that is true. Later that week, Finn fell ill. Fever took him quick, and it scared her more than she let on. She sat beside his bed, wiping his forehead, whispering soft things Quinn could not hear. He brought her water, broth, firewood. He did not ask her to rest, but when she finally leaned her head against his chest and cried, he held her without saying a word. By morning, the fever broke. Finn slept deeply, his skin cool again. Calla looked at Quinn with eyes full of something new. I thought I would lose him, she whispered. You did not, he said. You saved him. She shook her head. I think we both did. That night, she stayed up with Quinn by the fire. She did not speak much. Neither did he. But when she reached for his rough hand and laced her fingers through his, he did not pull away. You were not what I expected, she said, voice low. Neither were you, he said. She smiled again, softer this time. That is not a bad thing. No, he said. It is not. When she leaned her head against his shoulder, he let it rest there. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind moved through the grass. And inside, something steady and warm had started to grow. The first snow came in the night. Not heavy, just a thin veil over the land, softening the dry grass and turning the hills pale under the morning light. Calla stood at the kitchen window, her sleeves rolled to her elbows, hands wet from scrubbing the tin basin. Outside, Quinn moved with slow purpose, checking the barn roof, pausing now and then to knock snow off the eaves with a long-handled rake. Finn sat on the floor near the stove, stacking wooden blocks Quinn had carved from scrap pine. He wasn't coughing that morning, though his voice still rasped when he spoke. Calla watched him build and knock down his towers, his small face set in concentration, then glanced back outside. Quinn's shoulders were hunched against the cold, his coat dusted white. She dried her hands and crossed to the door. Pulling the wool shawl tighter, she stepped out barefoot onto the porch. You'll catch your death like that, Quinn said, not looking up from the rake. I only wanted to ask if you'd like coffee, she called back, her breath fogging in the air between them. He straightened slowly, leaned the rake against the beam. Only if you'll sit with me while I drink it. She hesitated, then nodded. It's ready. Not long after, they sat at the table, the stove ticking as it threw off heat. The coffee was strong and dark, and neither of them said much until the cups were nearly empty. Your boy's hands are clever, Quinn said finally, nodding toward the floor where Finn now traced patterns in the soot with a stick. Takes after someone. Calla's fingers tightened slightly on her cup. His father never noticed. Thought quiet meant something was wrong with him. Quinn didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was low. Quiet's not a flaw. Some things grow better slow. She looked down, brushing at a loose thread on her sleeve. He was not a cruel man, just impatient and tired. Always tired. You don't owe me the shape of your past, Quinn said. Not unless you want to give it. I don't know what I owe anymore, she said, not looking at him. But I know I've never had a man ask me nothing without expecting something in return. I'm not waiting to collect, he said. She looked up then. I know. That evening, after Finn was asleep, Calla sat by the hearth sewing a tear in one of his shirts. Quinn brought in a load of firewood, boots crunching faintly on the packed dirt. He shook the snow from his shoulders and set the logs by the stove. There's a neighbor, a widow with 2 boys, he said, easing into the chair across from her. Name's Mrs. Wendell. She teaches reading Sundays in her parlor. Finn might benefit. Calla threaded the needle again. He knows his letters. I taught him last spring. But he's hardly been around other children. Might be time, he said. She's kind. Keeps hens. Bakes cakes with molasses. Calla smiled faintly. You sound like you approve of her. I trust her, he said. That's not something I offer easy. She tied off the stitch and bit the thread. Then I'll bring him Sunday. They sat quiet a while. Outside, the wind had gone still, and the snow muffled everything. The fire snapped once, and Calla shifted in her chair, rubbing her hands together for warmth. Do you ever go to town? She asked. When need calls, he said. Supplies. Tools. There's a smith I trade with, and a saloon I avoid. She gave a small laugh. I haven't seen a town proper in nearly a year. Would you like to? He asked. She folded the mended shirt on her lap. I might. Quinn leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. Then next week, if the roads don't ice, I'll hitch the team. You and Finn can have the day. She shook her head. Not just us. Come with us, Quinn. He met her eyes across the low light. If you're asking, I will. She nodded once, then stood, gathering the shirt. I'll see if the water's still warm for washing. Before she crossed to the basin, she paused behind him. Her hand touched his shoulder, light but steady. He didn't move. Thank you, she said. For what? For not rushing anything. He reached up, covering her hand with his. I've waited a long time without knowing what for. I can wait longer now that I do. She didn't answer, but she didn't pull away either. Later that night, when the house had gone still, Quinn stepped onto the porch. The sky was clear, stars sharp above the dark ridges. He listened to the quiet of the land, to the faint creak of the barn settling into the cold, to the hush of snow shifting under its own weight. Behind him, through the narrow window, he saw the glow of the lamp where Calla had left it burning low, and beyond that, the small rise and fall of Finn's breathing from the cot. It wasn't a loud kind of life, not the kind that marked the world or left tracks. But it was steady, and it was beginning to feel like home. The road into town twisted along the creek, still half frozen in places, the ruts slick with thawed mud. Quinn drove the wagon steady, reins loose in hand, the team chewing up the distance with quiet patience. Calla sat beside him, her skirt hem lifted to keep from the grime, her gloved hands folded in her lap. Finn sat between them, chewing on a strip of dried apple, his cheeks ruddy from the cold but clear of fever. They passed a few scattered homesteads, smoke curling from stone chimneys, chickens pecking at the thawing earth. As they neared the first of the storefronts, Calla adjusted her borrowed bonnet and leaned slightly toward him. What do people here think of strangers? She asked. They take their time, Quinn said. But they're not unkind. And women alone with children? He kept his eyes on the road. You're not alone. They reached the mercantile just as the sun cleared the ridgeline. Quinn helped her down, then lifted Finn into her arms. The boy clung to her shawl, wary of the bustle inside. The shop bustled with the usual spring stir, men collecting seed, women inspecting bolts of calico, a boy sweeping flour dust from the floorboards. Behind the counter, Mr. Haskett nodded at Quinn. Lawson, been a while. Needed flour. And sugar, Quinn said. And Calla needs a kettle. Calla blinked, caught off guard. Quinn didn't look at her. Mr. Haskett's gaze shifted. Ma'am, he said with a polite nod. You're his wife, then? Calla opened her mouth, then closed it. She's under my care, Quinn said. That's enough said. Haskett grunted and turned to fetch the items. Calla didn't speak again until they stepped outside, her arms full of brown paper bundles. You didn't have to say that, she said. Quinn took the packages from her. I know. They visited the seamstress next. Mrs. Clary took one look at Calla's threadbare coat and clucked her tongue, pulling down a bolt of dark wool without waiting for permission. Child needs a winter cloak too, she said briskly. You'll want something lined. Cold's not done with us yet. Calla let herself be measured without fuss, though her posture stiffened each time Mrs. Clary tugged the tape snug across her shoulders. Quinn waited by the door, arms crossed, watching the street. Did you know her? Calla asked when they stepped back into the sun. She buried a husband 2 years ago, he said. Had twins the same winter. Doesn't ask for help, but folks find ways to give it. Calla adjusted Finn higher on her hip. I think I like her. She's hard to dislike. They ate their meal at a bench behind the feed store, bread and jam wrapped in cloth, washed down with water from the pump. Finn sat on Quinn's knee, licking jam from his fingers, his earlier shyness faded. Calla leaned back, watching them. You're different here. Quinn raised a brow. How so? You're quieter on the ranch. Out here you look like you carry less. He considered that. Out there, everything's mine to keep alive. Doesn't leave much room for ease. She looked down at her skirt, brushing off a crumb. And what am I? He set Finn gently beside her and stood, brushing his palms on his trousers. Someone I invited in. That means I'm to make room. She didn't answer right away. The breeze stirred her hair, lifting the wisps at her neck. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. I haven't known what to do with kindness that doesn't unmake me. Quinn knelt in front of her, both knees in the dirt. Finn wandered a few paces off, chasing a beetle in the grass. You don't have to do anything with it, he said. Just let it be. She reached out slowly, her fingers brushing his cheek, rough with stubble. He didn't move. Her hand lingered there, warm against the wind. I'm learning, she said. That afternoon, they stopped at the Wendell homestead on the way back. The parlor was full of children, boots stacked by the door, the scent of molasses thick in the air. Finn hesitated at first, then edged toward a pair of boys building a tower of books. Calla watched from the threshold, arms crossed tightly. Quinn stood beside her, not touching her, but close enough she could feel his steadiness. He'll be safe here? She asked. Yes, he said. She watches over them. And me? He turned to her then. I've been trying to. She looked at him for a long time, then took his hand. Not as a test or a thank you, just an answer. When they returned home, the snow had melted from the porch. Calla carried Finn inside, laid him in the bed, and pulled the covers up to his chin. Quinn lit the lamp, the flame steady in the glass. She joined him at the table, folding her hands. There's room to grow something here, she said quietly. I didn't know if I'd believe that again. He reached across the table, took her hand in his. We'll grow it slow, he said. But we'll grow it. She nodded, eyes shining, and didn't let go. A week after the trip to town, the ground softened enough for Quinn to begin planting. He worked with quiet determination, hands sunk into the earth from sunup to near dusk. Calla watched from the porch steps as he moved across the field with a practiced rhythm, the bag of seeds slung over his shoulder, the turned soil dark against the fading snowpack beyond the fence line. Finn sat beside her, tracing his stick through the dirt, humming under his breath. When the sun dipped low and the light turned amber, Quinn came in, boots heavy with mud. He left them by the door without needing to be asked, then washed at the basin while Calla stirred stew over the fire. She glanced at the line of his back, the way his shoulders curved slightly from the day's work. I can help tomorrow, she said. He dried his arms with the towel. It's not work meant for someone still healing. I'm not broken, she said, quiet but firm. I know, he replied, not turning. That's not why I said it. She set the wooden spoon down, wiping her hands on her apron. Then why? He faced her then. Because you've shouldered more than enough already. Let me carry this part. Her mouth parted slightly, as if to argue, but she let it close again. She returned to the stew, her posture softening. After supper, Finn curled up on the bare rug by the stove, his thumb in his mouth, eyes drifting shut. Calla pulled a blanket over him and brushed his hair back, then sat in the chair opposite Quinn, who was whittling a spoon from a block of maple. You always make things with your hands, she said. I was never much for words, he answered, shaving another curl away. But I can shape wood into something useful. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Did your father teach you that? No, he said. He left before I was old enough to learn anything from him. My uncle raised me. He was a wheelwright. She nodded slowly. My mother taught me to sew with scraps from potato sacks. She said even poor cloth could be made fine with enough care. Quinn looked over at her. That's what you've done here. She tilted her head. With what? With all of it, he said simply. The next day, Mrs. Wendell arrived at the ranch with her boys to trade eggs and a jar of blackberry preserves. She brought word that her sister, a widow in Helena, was looking for help with her small schoolhouse, just for a few months. Calla listened, then walked with her as far as the gate. When she came back inside, Quinn was tying a fresh piece of leather to Finn's toy horse. She says I could earn a little money teaching letters, Calla said from the doorway. Only a few days a week. Quinn looked up, expression unreadable. You thinking of going? I'm thinking of what it might mean, she said. For Finn. And for me. He set the horse down gently. It's your choice. Always. She stepped closer. You're not upset? No, he said. But I'd miss having you here during the days. She stood beside him now. I'd come back every night. He looked at her hands, calloused and red from the wash water. Then I'd wait on the porch for you. Her eyes searched his, slow and serious. You don't ask for much. I ask for what's real, he said. That night, after Finn was tucked into bed, Calla stepped out onto the porch, her shawl pulled tight. Quinn sat on the top step, smoking a hand-rolled cigarette, the ember glowing faintly in the dark. She sat beside him, knees brushing. I've been thinking, she said. He didn't turn. About the schoolhouse? No, she said. About here. About you. He stubbed the cigarette out on the stone and waited. I didn't come looking for love, she said. I came looking for shelter, safety, a place to stop running. I know, but I found more than that, she said, voice low. And I don't want to pretend I haven't. He turned his head then, just enough to see her eyes. She didn't look away. I want to build something with you, she said. Something that won't blow away with the next hard wind. His voice was rough. Then stay. Not because you owe me. Not because you're out of places to go. Stay because you want this. Me. I do, she said. I do. He reached over and she leaned into him. No rush, no fire. Just warmth. Just closeness. Just the kind of promise that didn't need saying twice. Inside, Finn stirred once in his sleep, then settled again, the quilt rising and falling with his breath. And outside, under the wide Montana sky, two people sat shoulder to shoulder, not alone anymore. The air warmed by slow degrees. The tips of the cottonwoods darkened first, then the grass along the creek beds began to green. By mid-April, Finn could run outside without a shawl, though Calla still made him wear the knitted cap Mrs. Wendell had given him. He'd grown bolder with the changing season, climbing fence rails with scraped knees and chasing the hens through the yard until they squawked their protest. Calla hung the sheets on the line one morning, her sleeves rolled, fingers stiff from the wash water. Quinn was down in the lower field, setting fence posts to mark a new grazing line. She could see the rhythm of his arms from the porch, the swing, the lift, the drive. He worked close to the land, but not bowed by it. There was something in the way he moved now, something sure. He no longer carried that guarded stillness he'd worn when she first arrived. Finn tugged at her skirt. "Ma, I want to go see the calves." She bent to meet his eyes. "Only if you stay inside the fence and come back when I call." He nodded solemnly and ran off, his small boots kicking up dust. Calla watched him go, then leaned on the porch post, wiping her hands dry on her apron. Behind her, the door creaked open. "I saw a letter came from Helena," Quinn said, stepping outside with the envelope in hand. "Didn't want to open it on your behalf." She took the envelope, ran her thumb under the fold. The letter inside was short, written in neat, formal script. Her friend at the schoolhouse had found someone local to take over the teaching, now that spring allowed for easier travel. The offer had passed. "Well?" Quinn asked, watching her face. "They filled the post," she said. "I suppose it wasn't meant to stretch beyond the season. Do you regret not going?" She folded the letter in two and tucked it into her apron. "No, I was never looking to leave." Later that week, Quinn brought in the last of the winterwood and stacked it near the barn. Though the mornings had softened enough, they no longer needed a fire after breakfast. Calla stood beside him as he brushed down the mare, her hand resting on the stall door. "I was thinking," she said, "of planting herbs behind the house. Nothing large. Parsley, maybe some chamomile. There's good light there most of the day." He nodded. "You'll need fencing to keep the chickens out. I'll find some spare wire. I can manage the bed myself." "I know," he said, "but I'd like to help." She rested her chin on her arms, watching him. "You always offer, but never press. I never want you to feel beholden." She stepped into the stall beside him, close enough to smell the faint sweetness of hay in his shirt. "Would it surprise you if I said I want to be?" His hand stilled on the mare's coat. "To me, to this life, to what we've made of it." He turned to face her fully. "Calla, She pressed her hand to his chest, right over his heartbeat. "I've had offers before, always from men who saw me as something to fill a space. You never asked me to fill anything. You just made room." He caught her hand in his, calloused fingers gentle. "I didn't know what I was waiting for until you stepped off that train." She smiled, slow and soft. "I didn't know what I deserved until I met you." That evening, they walked the pasture after supper, Finn between them, his hands in theirs. He pointed at a kestrel overhead, chattered about ants and stones and the names of the calves. The sky turned copper behind the mountains, and the wind brushed through the high grass like a hush. As they neared the house, Quinn stopped. "Calla." She turned, her braid catching the last light. "I've got no preacher's words," he said. "No letters or rings. But I want you with me, not just here, not just now." Her eyes shone, not with tears, but with something clearer. "Then say it plain." "I love you," he said. "I want to build our days together, and whatever time's ahead." She stepped into his arms. "Then we already have what matters." They married a week later, beneath the cottonwoods behind the house. Mrs. Wendell stood as witness, her boys fidgeting in their clean shirts. Finn held a sprig of wild sage and gave it to Quinn like a token. The justice from Boulder read the words slow and clear, though Quinn and Calla barely heard them. Their hands were joined, and neither looked away. The house took on new shape in the months that followed. Calla's herbs grew strong along the south wall, and Quinn built a small table for the porch where they took their coffee most mornings. Finn helped feed the calves, his hands more sure each day. The rooms smelled of bread and lavender, and no corner sat in silence anymore. By the first snow of the next winter, Calla's belly had begun to round. It wasn't spoken of with fanfare, but with quiet joy. Quinn built a cradle from pine, carved with leaves and stars, and set it near the hearth. They didn't speak of what they'd left behind. It wasn't needed. They had chosen this life, its steady days, its honest wear, its quiet kind of love. A love without show, but with roots deep enough to weather all seasons. And when the wind rose again across the hills, it found a home lit from within, where laughter hummed beneath the rafters, and two hearts long bruised by the world had finally found peace in one another.